Good evening, everyone. My name is Kuldeep. I serve as a director at Always AV Systems. Thank you so much for joining the session which we are having today with Oblong to optimize a hybrid workspace. This is obviously a very hot topic in as we get back to office or after the pandemic, as well as we evaluate some of the strategies which the workspace is going to have to deal with rooms being a combination of in-person as well as remote working. I'm joined by Patrick Scully, who basically is responsible for the Europe as well, the EMEA as well as the India region for Oblong. I call him a magician because that's what he does. He helps create some really cool workspaces, and we've known Patrick and Oblong for many years now. We've done some memorable projects in country. Patrick will talk a little bit about them, as well as talk about the latest and greatest in terms of hybridization of the workspace. So, without much further ado, Patrick, I'd request you to take the show.
Sure thing. Thank you, Kuldeep, and thanks everyone for joining me today to discuss basically how we can optimize the hybrid workplace with Mezzanine. As Kuldeep mentioned, I'm the customer success manager here for EMEA and also covering the India region. I'd like to thank Kuldeep and the team, of course, for inviting me to speak with you today. So let me begin by giving a brief background to our company. So our technology at Oblong was the basis for the computing systems depicted in the film Minority Report. Some of you might be old enough to remember this movie, others may not, but it has its roots in more than 2 decades of research at the MIT Media Lab. So founded in 2006, Oblong created a platform for a new era of spatial, distributed, and collaborative computing. And actually, Mezzanine was formed in as a product just over 10 years ago now, back in 2012. So this became the multi-share collaboration reality that we've been selling since then. The Mezzanine product in its current form is available with optical wands which allow you to interact with all of the content in the room to connected screens. Just to mention as well, in terms of our company, the headquarters is in Los Angeles. And of course, we have a global network of authorized partners, including Allwave AV in India. So now let's actually start by taking a look at the workplace situation and indeed some of the current challenges that Kuldeep alluded to. So if we look at where most organizations are today, right, they've been dealing with the global impact of the pandemic for the last 14 months or so. It's clear that teams are facing multiple challenges when it comes to meaningful and efficient collaboration. And if we think about it, I've been looking at some figures conducted by research by Dimensional Research Survey. I found it very interesting, whereby they had over 1,500 people, executives, knowledge workers, and they were capturing employee office challenges as such. 89% of those surveyed cited frustrations with in-office experience. And including, for example, one of the challenges they faced was 42% expressed challenges when they want to share content in the meeting. If you think about it, that's a considerable number, right? 42% having challenges when they go to share content. And we often see that meetings are limited to sharing only one content stream at a time, right? This this kind of meeting flow then gets disrupted, and it creates what I would refer to as a bottleneck when it comes to sharing content. So this is a very important point, and we'll refer a little bit later as I cover the slides. 96% of those in the survey indicate that they need more intelligent workplace technology to improve the work environment. Here at Oblong, we believe that in-person meetings remain a key part of having a collaborative culture. And of course, we know that more employees will need to connect and collaborate between their office locations and of course, remotely. So with that in mind, and as we look going forwards, we need to make sure, and I guess most companies need to prioritize that the meeting spaces, the collaboration spaces that they have are optimized for in-room, room-to-room, and room-to-remote collaboration. So let's ask a pretty basic question here. Why do teams come together in the first place? Okay, it's a pretty obvious question and an obvious answer. They come together to meet, to share, and to decide, right? But if we look at really why they are coming together in terms of with their fellow colleagues and collaborators, be they in the office or remote or in a different, just joining remotely, it's because they need to fix big problems, right? And they don't work in a silo to fix big problems. They need to collaborate, come together and fix those more complex problems. And this is something which Mezzanine really facilitates well in an in-room, room-to-room and remote capacity. I kind of think about it now when I look at the return to office and the clear reality of the hybrid workplace. Many IT, workplace, and indeed leadership teams are being tasked with finding a visual collaboration technology that offers flexibility to their staff, that drives engagement, but also ensures productivity, right? And fundamentally, it encourages employees to come back into the office. So through that lens, I want to now look at how the Mezzanine can optimize the hybrid workplace. So if we look at the in-room experience here, okay, the ability that, first of all, if I mention the primary operating system, which is the Mezzanine, right, it allows for multi-share communication to share content onto all of the connected screens. It's a flexible canvas, right? And all users, importantly, have a voice at the table. So it's quite a democratic pixel workspace, if you will. Okay, so everyone in the room can share from their own laptops, their own devices onto the Mezzanine. The other point to mention is that is the in-room experience, okay? And it's an appliance which drives that experience. If we look at the next part, right, we're looking at connecting one room to another, right? So this is really important as people are, of course, needing to collaborate with their colleagues in other offices, okay? So they're geographically dispersed teams, but importantly with Mezzanine's info presence, which is basically mezzanine to mezzanine connectivity, point to point on the network, it allows dispersed teams to see the same things in the same way, thus accelerating knowledge transfer and sharing, consensus, and high quality decision making. And of course, it greatly reduces the need to travel. So that's room to room. If we now look at the room to remoter experience, this interop is critically important at the moment because we know that all of the research indicates that more and more people are going to continue to work remotely as well. So this interop where with the Mezzanine app here, you can share content, you can upload content into the meeting while those that are in the room will see that in real time. That becomes a really important point. So the remote participants can add to that meeting and feel valued in terms of what they want to contribute. And indeed, if we look at the tools that they can use, bring your own device in the office, right? It could be your iPhone, iPad, your Windows or Mac laptop to sharing content into the Mezzanine meeting. This is all possible in terms of being able to share into the Mezzanine across in-room, room-to-room, room-to-remote, and that's an important point. Recently, actually just a few days back, I read a report about Deloitte here in the UK, and they have allowed, going forward, their employees to work remotely, right, indefinitely. But interestingly, the office locations that they have, they're keeping them, and they're keeping those offices to have high value collaboration meeting sessions in those spaces. So it's going to be kept for training, collaboration, and client meetings. And I think this is going to be a very important point when people can consider workplace technologies going forward. People will still work remotely, but when they're in the office, they need a solution that is able to address the hybrid workplace. As you can see from these 4 quadrants, the mezzanine unifies the teams across all of the different locations. What I'm now going to do is, if I look at and take a moment just to consider what the conventional meeting room encourages, right? So the conventional meeting room encourages a serial monologue, just a monologue, right? What do I mean by that exactly? So I'm saying one person can share at a time, pass the ball, wait your turn. Yeah, and this can lead to a very linear approach. It creates, as I mentioned earlier, a content sharing bottleneck, because meetings can be interrupted. People have to stop sharing so I can free up another input for someone else to share. So it disrupts the flow of the meeting, right? Bigger screens and indeed longer tables won't fix that issue, right? And I like to think of that as a serial monologue, and that's, yeah, it's limiting to what people can do. If we contrast that with multiple access dialogue, this is something that Mezzanine is set up for, right? It allows multiple access. It allows for multiple shares of content simultaneously to be brought into the meeting. This, of course, is a key part for driving collaboration, right? To have a more effective collaboration, but it's also the future of work, right? Content is the next area to look at when we look at future of work, because there's been many video conferencing solutions on the market for many years now, but they don't address the content challenge. And I think this is an important point. Also, when you have multiple layers and content shares at the same time, you get a much broader, kind of fuller context of what data is being shared in. So this is a really important point. This multiple access dialogue where everyone has a voice at the table and being able to share in a very fluid way. I'd like to spend another moment just looking at the specifics of that multi-share and what does that mean in practice at the appliance level, right? So if we look at the multi-share with respect to the Mezzanine appliance, which can be installed in room or indeed in a server room. So you have 4 HDMI inputs, that's 4K inputs, which can be used for anything, video conferencing or laptop inputs, etc. You get 6 network-based wireless screen share, and you get, obviously, of course, the ability to upload images, PDFs, etc. Images, worth noting, can support up above 200 megapixels. So if you've got, really high-res imagery, engineering drawings, etc., this is something that's really a very good compatibility with Mezzanine to view that. So that's one aspect of multi-share. If we think about control devices now, so they were our inputs. If we look at how we can control the content in Mezzanine, we can use the Mezzanine app, which is a desktop app, which is on Windows 10 or indeed Mac OS. We can control it with an optical wand or wands, which is a very fluid and direct manner of interacting with all of the connected screens. And of course, bring your own device. You can use your iPhone, your iPad, again, to control all of the content, make annotations, take photos, add text, and upload them into the workspace. And importantly, as this talks to the mezzanine to mezzanine connectivity, you can have up to 4 rooms connected at once, okay? And when they are connected at once, you can have 10 live streams being shared between those locations. So this is a really important and key differentiator with Mezzanine. That's multi-share. Now, if we looking at Mezzanine and how Mezzanine can redefine the meeting space for the hybrid workplace. Here are a couple of things to keep in mind. With Mezzanine, in relation to the hybrid workplace, it promotes an inclusive collaboration by enabling all users to share content simultaneously. It facilitates the commingling of data to compare and cross-reference multiple options in fuller context without any gymnastics. This is a really important point. It gives teams a huge competitive advantage by fostering faster and better decision-making. Again, think about the time to market of those critical decision-making. That gives you an advantage over your competitors. It's more engaging. It captivates your audience, your internal audience, as much as visitors. And yeah, it's fun to use, right? Employees will want to come back to the office. Everyone has their own situation. You can be working at home with screaming kids. You might not have a sufficient space in your flat share or indeed in your house. So there are many reasons why people will be very happy to get back into the office. And finally, a very important point to mention is Mezzanine is CFO friendly, right? Mezzanine complements your existing investment in video conferencing endpoints, okay? So if we now looking at the Mezzanine flavors, right? Before I finish up here, I just have a few more slides. So the Mezzanine itself, it comes as a 200 series, a 300, or a 600. So there are three different options we have available, right? The Mezzanine appliance, it sits logically between the displays and the other inputs, such as video conferencing and end user laptops. And as we saw a little bit earlier, it supports up to 10 inputs, 4 HDMI and 6 wireless. And of course, up to 6 outputs as well, right? You've got options, 2 outputs. So if we look at that a little bit more, the 200 for teaming spaces, that supports 2 outputs, right? The 300 that supports 3 outputs for a more immersive info presence. And obviously the 600 supports 6 outputs, okay? And worth noting that all of these units, they can be used with an optical wand or wands, or indeed without. We give people the options as they see fit for their experience. The next slide, I'm just going to share with you what potential 200 series could look like and the different configurations it comes in, right? So as I mentioned, the Mezzanine 200 drives 2 outputs, 2 screens, right? We support screen sizes varying from 55-inch to 98-inch, or indeed, as you see in the bottom half here, much larger LED walls. Okay, so it's a whole myriad of different screen sizes, and the optical tracking is supported on all of those. Okay, so this is the Mezzanine 200 for more teaming, smaller spaces. If we look at the next level up, we're looking at the Mezzanine 300. And on the top half, you'll see you've got your classic triptych. You've got, and again, same idea, it could be 55-inch to 98-inch screens, or indeed larger. One other interesting configuration, because again, it's driving 3 screens, 3 outputs. On the bottom left, you'll see you've got 2 screen primary, and then you've got what we call a digital corkboard to the right. So this is a very interesting and indeed popular configuration, the Mezzanine 321, okay? And on the bottom right there, we've got a display wall. Okay, so that's considered as 3 outputs, the 6x2, right? So you've got lots of different options available. So that's the Mezzanine 300. Now, if we jump to the more immersive experience, which is the 600, again, if we look at the image on the top left there, you've got 3 screens on the triptych, and then you've got 3 screens on the right, which are the corkboards. Again, other configurations are possible, but this is for more of a high kind of wow factor in a meeting space. Definitely unparalleled in terms of presentational use case. Also worth noting that you'll see from those images, Mezzanine is used for a very specific use case, be that in the medical use case, crisis operations, cyber security, just to name a few. Okay. Importantly, for those specific use cases as well, you can connect those mezzanines to other mezzanines, right? So this is how companies connect their subject matter experts together for real-time critical decision-making. A very important point to keep in mind. Now, that brings me very promptly to the last slide here, which is about resources. So if you need to find out more about Mezzanine in terms of use cases, data sheets, tech specs, and supporting videos, you can visit our website on www.oblong.com. Or of course, I would encourage you to request a demo from Allwave AV. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Allwave is an authorized Oblong partner, so they can sell, implement, and importantly, support Mezzanine. And I've been working with Kuldeep and his team for a number of years now, and they've got multiple units deployed in India. So I'd be very pleased to direct you to the Allwave team for support. Finally, do we have any questions from today's session?
I'm going to open up the chats. I think one of the question is, can you give us an example of in-room, room-to-room, and room-to-remote connection?
Sure thing, sure thing. What I might do just in terms of explaining that is this particular slide demonstrates the in-room, which is the top left. Okay, so basically users come into the room, they can share wirelessly from their Mezzanine desktop app on Windows 10 or Mac OS. Equally, visitors that come into that room, there is an option for 4 HDMI, so they can just plug that in and that will automatically share on the screen. So that's the in-room piece, right? And again, as we saw earlier, it can be 2-screen, 3-screen, or 6-screen output. The room-to-room piece is the top right. This is really important because you get parity on what you're saying. It's multi-directional content sharing, right? So 10 live streams can be shared in any way. So I'm in London, I could share 2 screens or 2 live streams, and you could share 8 from Mumbai, for example. So, or indeed, if that's connected between 4 offices, it would be 2, 2, 2, etc. So you've got lots of options in terms of the room-to-room connectivity. In terms of the room-to-remote, you've got the option to use the Mezzanine app and manipulate content. You can upload content remotely. If you're connected over VPN, for example, you can, of course, upload PDFs. You can manipulate the content so that affects change in the meeting room itself. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you. The next question is, can we connect or share using Android operating systems?
Good question. Currently, no, it's using iOS devices only. Yeah.
Is there anything on the roadmap or not?
It's something that we don't have a fixed roadmap, but it's something that it's a question that I've had once or twice before. So it's something that I will feed back to the product team.
Sure. For the people that are connected remotely, can they annotate on the screen?
Yes, if they use the Mezzanine desktop app, they can. There's an option for annotation. You might see it here on the left bottom quadrant. There's an option there for annotation, right? So this, and if you're connecting again over VPN, you can click on any of the images that are there, click on annotate, and once you save that image, that will push it back up to the workspace for those in the room to see it, which is also important because all the revisions of the annotations are kept.
The next question is, what about Zoom and Microsoft Teams collaboration, as well as certifications for them?
So basically, the video conferencing units, they would be as an input into the Mezzanine. Okay, so whether you use a Cisco endpoint, a Zoom room, or if it's going to be Microsoft Teams, it would just be a physical input to the Mezzanine. We do not alter or change the behavior for the video conferencing connectivity, if you know what I mean. So we're purely about the content. The behavior for the video conferencing will behave as it normally does. One related question would be, just in anticipating the next question, is if you wanted to share out content from the mezzanine, you could have that, for example, on the right screen. If we look here at the top image here on the right, placing content, any or live stream on that right screen, and you click on the content share, that will share it out to the remoters. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure thing.
What about cloud storage? Any thoughts around cloud storage?
No. Well, I have thoughts around it, but what I mean is Mezzanine is an on-premise solution, right? So it's 100% on-premise. So we don't have a cloud offering.
Okay. I have one more question from the chat is, can we take control of the screen as a presentation to edit or delete or modify?
Yes. So basically, whether you use the Mezzanine app, the desktop app, or indeed the apologies, or indeed the iOS device, you can manipulate the content that's being shared on the screens. So you can delete it, you can make annotations, you can shrink, resize. It's completely fluid. It behaves like the wand, actually, in terms of the control.
Okay. For folks that are connected via Cisco WebEx, can remote participants also share simultaneously?
Yes, exactly. So we have an option for people connecting via, let's say you're on WebEx Teams, and if you wanted to share into the meeting, then that will, there's something called the embedded app within Mezzanine. So the Mezzanine embedded app in WebEx Teams allows you to share in content as well.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can we do a recording, like is recording built into the Mezzanine application?
No, there's no recording built into Mezzanine.
Okay. Those were the only questions which were there on the chat. I have a question from my end. Anything exciting or things we should look forward to in the next 6 to 8 months?
Well, as we're developing out the product, there will be UI enhancements. So be that from a kind of sharing capacity and also on the Mezzanine app. There is also from the product team, there are examples where we're going to add some additional functionality to the Mezzanine iOS app. Yeah.
Okay. I think those are all the questions that are there from the chat. We've had a number of participants tune in today. Yeah. So basically, we are towards the end of this seminar, this webinar rather. I hope it was useful, and we do wish to answer any questions that you may have. I've shared the on the chat box our company email, including Priyanka's email, who's our marketing coordinator. If you do have any questions or you feel that you would like to have a demo, please feel free to reach out to us. We do have the demo installed at one of our locations in Mumbai, but we're also happy to give virtual demos if required. If there are no other questions, I will take your leave and I will see all of y'all very shortly.
Thank you, Kuldeep, and thanks everyone for joining.
Thanks, Patrick.